Check that out, guys. Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. In today's video, I wanted to give you guys a quick overview of my current lineup of road bikes, because all three of the bikes you see right here, even though they all look somewhat similar, they all have small but tangible differences among the three of them, which I wanted to discuss. And also too, with these three bikes right here that I've tested and that I'm currently riding, I think that these three offer a pretty decent balance of performance, relative weight, and just overall value. And another thing too I wanted to point out with these all three of these bikes is, as you guys can see, the setup on them is basically the same as far as my bike fit, my reach, my saddle height. My saddle height's about 77 to 78 centimeters tall, but despite the fact that I've done my best to match my bike fit with all three of these bikes, there still are some tangible differences too. Another thing too I want to point out is I'm running a different set of components, or a group set I should say, on all three of these bikes. On the left, which is the Specialized LA Sprint, that is running the SRAM Force 12-speed electronic group set. In the middle is an 11-speed Shimano Ultegra. It's all hydraulic brakes, but it's mechanical shifting. And then my most recent one, which is my Yoeleo R12, that's running the latest version of the Shimano Ultegra Di2 12-speed. So I kind of want to talk about just the sort of shifting on these as well, because I am able to test out different sets of group sets. Now, some of the things that are constant on all three of these bikes. So number one is the saddle. All three saddles are running the same style of saddle, which is a short nose performance saddle. Should be 143 millimeters in width, and all of the tires and tubes are the same. So all three bikes are running latex inner tubes, and they are running Continental GP5000 and a 28C width. So despite the fact that the saddle, the tires and inner tubes are all constant, there still are some tangible differences among these three. Specialized LA Sprint, Winspace, Yoeleo R12. So let's go into each of these bikes and I will kind of break down some of my thoughts. Let's continue. One other thing I did forget to mention before we continue with this video is, believe it or not, all of these bikes more or less weigh about the same. They weigh about 7.8 to 7.9 kilograms without pedals, power meter, or cages, computer mount, all that stuff. And the reason why they all weigh the same is because of the type of wheels I have in them. So obviously with the LA Sprint, assumingly being the heaviest of the frames, that has the lightest wheels on them. The Winspace, on the other hand, that actually is the lightest frame set of the three, but the wheels, of course, being 65 millimeters deep, they're a little bit heavier. And then the more all-around frame that you see back there, the Yoeleo R12, that is the middle as far as the weight goes, but the wheels, they're not the lightest. So all in, all of these bikes each weigh about 7.8, 7.9 kilograms. So first up, let's talk about the Specialized LA Sprint. Specialized LA Sprint in a size 56. As you guys can see, I pretty much have the stem slammed. I'm not going to go through all of the components because I've already done that, but we are running SRAM Force ETAP 12-speed. The Elite drive wheels, which are super lightweight, those only come in at like 1,288 grams. So that really contributes to making this bike a lot lighter than what you would expect for being an alloy frame. But I really like the way this bike handles out on the road. Of the three bikes, yes, it is the stiffest and the most harsh, but the 28C tires, the latex tubes, sort of mitigate some of that harshness. And I've done century rides on this bike, 100 miles, and I haven't had any problems, especially with the carbon handlebars. That really helps with the comfort. And the saddle height on all these is about 77, 78 centimeters, like I mentioned. But yeah, this bike, even though the frame is the heaviest, it ends up being about the same as all these other ones. And the comfort is definitely, more harsh, but it's all out performing ride. I really do like this frame. Next up, let's talk about the Winspace Hyper T1500. My Winspace T1500, this is my favorite frame. This is the one frame that I don't think I'm ever going to sell or get rid of, or if anything, I might upgrade it to Shimano Di2 12-speed because I really like that group set a lot. As you guys can see, I've added some white decals to the tires, or the wheels, which I know is not for everyone, but man, it just makes my bike look so pro. Now, this is my favorite frame, hands down. It has the longest reach, despite the fact of me trying to set up the bike fit and geometry the same on all three. This one has the longest reach. I need a lot of reach on this. This is a size 56 frame. The handlebars are 125 length on the stem, but it ends up being more like 145 length. But I like this bike a lot. In terms of sort of the all-around racer. This bike is the bike versus the Specialized LA Sprint. It's super stiff. It handles well on the descents. It's really great for climbing on it. And despite the fact that I'm running Shimano Ultegra mechanical shifts with the hydraulic brakes, I've never missed a shift, whether I'm climbing, dropping into the small chainring, sprinting, all that stuff. It works. The performance on the shifting is perfect. So like I said in a previous video, having electronic shifting, it's a luxury, but you for sure don't need it. This is my favorite bike. I think the only thing that I regret on it is, as much as I love the funky colors on this bike, I do wish I would have got something a little bit more muted just for the sake of longevity, because it is pretty loud as far as the color goes. But what's funny is in Chicago, this bike is sort of my trademark. So anytime you see this bike in Chicago, 100% it's going to be me riding it. Next up, let's talk about the Yoeleo R12, my latest one. Now moving on to my Yoeleo R12. Now this is a very recent build. I've already done the first ride impressions on it. I've really been enjoying this bike. In terms of what I would consider refinement or sort of tangible sensation out on the road, the Yoeleo R12, in my opinion, is the most refined ride. It's not going to be the stiffest, and I suspect that part of the stiffness has to come down with the wheels, because the wheels are steel spoke rather than carbon, like on all the other bikes. And before I get back to the Yoeleo R12 one moment, I do want to also point out too that another thing that I've been able to test with all these bikes is, even though the geometry, the group sets are all different on all three, another thing that's also different, if you've noticed, is that the wheel depth on all three is also different. So the two on the left, they both have carbon spokes, the Winspace Hypers and the Elite Drive. Those both have carbon spokes. The wheels in the middle, those are 65 millimeters in depth, and then on the back, those are 45 millimeters in depth. Now, these Yoeleo R12 wheels, these come with Sapum CX Ray steel spokes, so they do offer a little bit more comfort on the rough pavement. The depth on these is 50 millimeters, and so that, you know, having, oh shoot, sorry, there's a bumblebee by me, yikes. Anyway, yeah, so being able to try all the different wheels and properties of wheels, that also is one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video. But going back to the R12, R12 is a very comfortable ride. It definitely is a ride you can use all day for all day comfort. If you are someone that is doing a lot of endurance rides and you want something that's comfortable, you can use it for that. Of course, you can use it to race. If I was going to use it for race, I would probably swap out a set of wheels that maybe are slightly lighter and that offer carbon spokes, because these 50 millimeter depth wheels, these come in at like 1,500, maybe 1,520 grams, which is not the lightest for 50, but that's okay because they offer a level of comfort. So how I would rate these bikes altogether. So for the all-out harsh ride crit racer, I'm taking the Specialized LA Sprint. For the overall racer, because this bike is super duper aero, which is why it's my favorite bike, the Winspace Hyper T1500 frame set with these Loon D67 wheels. And then for sort of my all-around comfort bike that maybe I might take on vacations with me for doing tour, in this current setup, I would take the Yoeleo. And yeah, basically, if I'm not doing a super hard or fast ride, I'm going to be taking the Yoeleo every time, because I still have to do some more testing on it to kind of give you guys a further review. But that's basically how I sort of compare all these bikes. So you have the super harsh crit racer that is still relatively comfortable. You have the all-around racer, and then you have the all-around comfortable endurance ride, where if you need to kind of kick it up a notch, you can do that. Alrighty, and next up, guys, I wanted to kind of give you guys a little side-by-side comparison on just how each of the bikes are set up. So clearly you can see the Yoeleo R12 in the middle. That one has the tallest of the stack heights, despite the fact that it is slammed. Second one coming in for the Specialized LA Sprint on the right. And then my Winspace T1500, that one actually has the lowest stack as far as the frame goes, which is why, even though I have the handlebar slam, that one is the lowest of all three. But it's just a really interesting comparison because the saddle height for the most part are the same on all three of these bikes. But just because of, you know, the geometry and design of all these, they do ride a little bit more differently. So yeah, so like with the Yoeleo R12, for example, that one, like I said, that one is the most comfortable of the three bikes. The LA Sprint is, of course, the most harsh of all three. And then the Winspace T1500, that comes in the middle as far as comfort goes. But then as far as actual riding characteristics and dynamics, I'd probably say it's the Specialized LA Sprint. That one is the most lively of the three, with the Winspace coming in a close second. But the thing is, because the Winspace is a super stiff bike, it's carbon and it's aero, that one just has an overall, for the sake of racing and kind of fast group rides, this one ends up being the favorite so far. But again, it's not saying that the Yoeleo R12 is any sort of slouch. It really just comes down to your bike fit, your reach, and your requirements out on the bike. But yeah, you kind of can see even with the saddle heights, they're all the same, short nose saddles. I do like to have my handlebars slammed, but this kind of gives you a good representation of what everything looks like. And I know in my last video, some of you guys were pretty upset about me reviewing or doing a build on that Tan X38 frame set because it looks like a Scott Foil RC Pro. But I mean, let's be honest, if you've been following this channel for any amount of time, you know that I have reviewed plenty of legitimate bikes. All these frames are UCI approved. If that's important to you, I don't really care. But in terms of quality and testing, then I would say that's a little bit important. But it's just kind of cool to see all three of these bikes together. But yeah, they all ride a little bit differently. So if you were to ask me today, which of these three bikes is my favorite, for sure it's the Winspace T1500. That one is my favorite. Honestly, I really like my Specialized LA Sprint. I recently did an update on that one, but most likely by the end of summer, I'm probably going to end up selling this frame because it is a little bit of redundancy compared to my Winspace T1500 frame set. But the Yoeleo R12, the bike is just, as a complete package, man, it's so comfortable. It's just so refined. I can't see myself getting rid of it, especially in this colorway, Ultegra Di2 12-speed. The LA Sprint, I think that's an easily replaceable bike for the type of performance you get. And it is the most expensive of the frames. That one was $1,800 for just the frame set. The Yoeleo is like maybe $1,500, $1,600, as well as for the Winspace T1500. So yeah, guys, as you can see, that's how all three of the bikes look. But I don't want to make this video too long, but I just wanted to give you guys a visual on how my road bike looks in 2023 for the summer. So that's going to wrap up today's video, guys. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down below. And I'm going to check you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.